Good morning and welcome to the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of Thursday, November the 19th, 2020. I'd like to acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the traditional territories of the Seashell Nation and the Squamish Nation. We have before us an agenda. Do I see anything like a motion to adopt the agenda? I see moved and seconded. Are there any changes, additions, deletions, reorderings? Anything? Not seeing any. All right. All in favor of the agenda? Thank you. That passes. I would next entertain a motion to receive all reports and communications. Moved, seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. All right, we start our day with sewage, our favorite topic. So the Wood Creek Park Wastewater Treatment Plant Replacement Update. Over to our GM of Infrastructure Services.
And I will defer this one to my manager capital projects. Steve, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Chair McMahon and fellow committee members. The purpose of this board report is to provide you with the results of the engineering operational assessment of the Wood Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant system. This system was constructed originally in 1999 to serve the residential customers of that area. The current treatment plant is not and has not been functioning properly for some time, which has resulted in non-compliances with the plant operating permit. Staff contracted with the MSR Solutions to complete a field review of an engineering assessment, analysis, and recommendations for upgrades of the wastewater treatment plant system. MSR concluded that there are several deficiencies to the primary and secondary treatment systems, as well as problems with the aeration system and excessive inflow and infiltration into the conveyance system. Working collaboratively with the SCRD staff, MSR has recommended several system improvements and upgrades, all of which are summarized in the engineering report. At the October 22nd board meeting, the board provided its support for a grant application to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant Program in the amount of $844,000. The results of this grant submission are anticipated to be known in Q3 2021. A 2021 budget proposal will be brought forward to allow for the completion of the required system improvements and upgrades. I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions about the Wood Creek Park treatment system? I'm just going to ask one. Director Seegers, jump right in.
You could ask your question and I can follow you.
Okay. Having walked through the field behind the park there, it's wet. I take it that the water table is a problem with that site. Is that the case?
That is correct. There's a high water table in there, yes, on the vacant lot that you're referring to, yes, which is the disposal field also for the treatment system, yes.
And so the new filter should remediate that and make the field less wet?
Well, the filter itself isn't located in the field. It's next to basically the pump house that's down there. So the remediation would be within that area, and then what the benefit is, the effluent would be treated to a better standard, and then it would still be disposed. So there is no major modifications to the disposal field treatment system at all proposed at this time.
Good. Thank you. Director Seuss.
Thank you. Given the timing, I know that with the majority of these grants, when we apply for them, we can't actually start work on the project until we receive notification of, successful application or not. How are we going to get from now to basically probably 2 years with the system as it's functioning. What needs to happen to actually keep it at least some semblance of compliance and providing the service that's required for the community?
Well, the current scope of the contract we have, the current consultant was to basically provide a limited bid ready specifications of the improvements, so we could have a shelf ready bid specifications provided and ready to go. We would just have to hold on to bidding the project or proceeding any further until we were to receive the grant notification. As you had mentioned, Director Seegers, it's not retroactive, so we would not be able to do anything as far as bidding it or construction until we were to hear back on the successfulness of the grant. So in the meantime, we'll just continue to, monitor the effluent quality as we've been continuing, and maybe we could take proactive steps like factoring out if we have to, the septic tank where the effluent solids deposited and stuff like that in the meantime. And
I guess I'm just concerned that we know that it needs work. Are we going to make it to the time when we actually get the work done?
There are some, small improvements we could possibly do, because there are some components that are not functioning that may be low cost improvements that we could look at possibly fixing for the system to get us there in the interim.
And to add to that, I think what we're currently doing is just accruing additional operating and maintenance costs, because we have to bump out more frequently and those kind of things. So we'll, by continuing those efforts, we hope to avoid any non-compliances until we have the certainty about the grant, because there is that need to do it to get the work done. We're putting forward a budget proposal as a backup. I hope we don't need it, but in case we don't get the grant, that we can at least move forward with the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Hiltz.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to preface my statements today by acknowledging that November 19th is World Toilet Day. Just to let you know that it is World Toilet Day. This is a World Health Organization Day, and it's to raise awareness for the 4.2 billion people who live without access to safely managed sanitation. And it follows the sustainability goal number 6, water and sanitation for all by 2030. So I think that this project falls underneath of that goal. So World Sanitation Day, happy flushing today. So so that's I don't know how you arrange that, but that's just the way it is, right? So on page 37 of the report, the piece that caught my attention was influent qualities are unknown. So it's on page 30, I think it's 39 of the package, 37 of 39 of the package, 37 of the report. So my question is, in order to design a plant, it's better to know what's going in so you can figure out what's going to come out. And so the two pieces that I see are missing are the volume, which for this just seems to be the perfect situation where we have water meters. All the facilities are water metered, so you know how much is going in from water meters. And in the wintertime, most people don't keep any water, they want to let it go. So there's a really nice way to correlate volumes here. And I think that it could help with the issue of the volume of the permit and identifying how much infiltration is going on. And I'd sure like to know if it's within the scope between now and final designs, if more data is going to be collected about the influent in terms of what is happening at the front end of the system. So is that within the scope, or is that anticipated in the future to collect more information about the influent qualities and quantities?
Thank you for the question. In response to your question, there is a totalizer flow meter at the pump house where we do measure and we did base our flow parameters based on the amount of basically the inflow in equals the effluent out. So we do have that as a known quantity, and is actually the more precise way to measure the actual flow entering the system. Water meter is one way you had mentioned, which is a good way, but it's not as precise. With the flow totalizing meter, it actually takes into account rainfall data. As I mentioned earlier in my report, there is substantial inflow into the system, so it's actually more precise measurement by utilizing the totalizer flow meter, which is what we based our design criteria on. As far as the effluent quality, apparently we do have a couple, we do have some data points of sampling, so we do have the known effluent from records in the past that we can look at and further ascertain and compare it. So in answer to your question, yes, we can look at that data as we get into the final design for the system and that type of thing. Yes. Thank you for the question.
Follow-up?
Yeah, the follow-up, the reason I draw attention to the influent is because often designs aren't looking at our soft West Coast water precisely. The district of Seashot, I believe, has had to adjust their process because of the qualities of the influent were different than what was anticipated. I believe they're having to do some alkalinity additions, I believe. And the town of Gibsons was looking at that as well. So on the West Coast here, the rainy West Coast, we have very soft water which is not the kind of chemistry in other places in the world. So that's something that I've noticed on the Sunshine Coast. The water meter issue is essentially to verify how much influence you have. If you not have a known quantity coming out and you have the totalizer, the difference is the infiltration. So that would give you an indication of how big the holes are in the pipes, because ideally you have zero infiltration, right? Ideally, but that's a pretty unrealistic expectation. So it's another, for me, it's a way to demonstrate to the public how water metering data can be used for other issues. And I think it's a key component to demonstrating how water meters can be used, not just for potable water, but also for the wastewater systems. So that's just a follow-up on those pieces.
Thank you. I just had one final question. Is there a seasonality to the problems with this plant, or are they occurring scattered through the year?
Thank you for the question. It is more noted, certainly, with the higher rain events. There's a direct correlation with the rain events and the increased flow into the system. And then that seems to be also driving the non-compliances as well during the peak rain events or shortly thereafter.
So winter.
Winter, yes. In particular, like December, January timeframe, the rainiest months of the year, typically. We're noticing that.
Okay, thank you. We are receiving that report for information, so no further action is required. So I think we can go next to the contract for Church Road Wellfield project update. That one, I believe, is our GM.
That's correct. That's Olini. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this report. The purpose of this report is to seek to request an amendment to the contract with Associated Engineering to include the additional work required in support of our water license application for the Church Road Wellfield. As indicated about 2 weeks ago at the Special Corporate Administrative Services Committee meeting, additional works required in support of our proposed EFN, as well as the monitoring plan more discussion about the functioning of the aquifer, as well as additional support to consultation by the ministry with the Squamish First Nation. And we're seeking an amendment to the contract for a value of $75,000. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Church Road is pretty important these days. We were very disappointed that we can't get it online in the original timeline. I'm looking for questions here. Okay. Seeing no questions on this report, do I see any motions? Director Seegers.
I'll move the recommendations as presented on page 81.
Seconder, I see seconders. Is there any further discussion? Wow, we're quiet this morning. Seeing none. All in favor? That's everybody. Anyone opposed? No, I don't think so. All right. Excellent. Next, Drought Response Plan 2020 Summary. The story of last summer. Over to Water Sustainability Coordinator.
Actually, I'm waiting for our water sustainability technician to join as well, but I think Jen, is she in the gallery?
She's in the gallery, yeah. So we're just gonna.
Yeah.
There we go.
Take it away, Jen.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide a summary to the board on the application of the Drought Response Plan in 2020, overall proactive application of the water conservation regulations, as well as weather patterns in 2020 prevented the progression to Stage 4 water conservation regulations on all water systems with the exception of Eastbourne. In addition to the communication of regulations at each stage, staff worked to share water system, water usage, and conservation information through 2 new initiatives, the weekly water update video posts on social media and the monthly water use update to residents with water meters. Based on the evaluation of the implementation of the drought response plan in 2020, staff are not recommending any changes for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. And questions, Director Pratt.
Not so much questions, but a couple of comments. First off, the weekly water update videos, fantastic. Absolutely loved them. Shared them a number of times. Was actually able to deal with some comments on social media by saying, here you go. It's just fantastic. So well done water team. And then the other one would be a huge thank you to the collaboration with the town of Gibsons. The 6 to 7% reduction in water demand with the Gibsons uncoupling. That's you say 6 to 7%. It doesn't seem like a big number, but it is a huge number when we're considering water restrictions during the summer. So fantastic intergovernmental collaboration. Thank you so much, Town of Gibsons, for that. And just really appreciated all of the information that the water staff was putting out. So thank you to Remco and your team, and Jen and Raf. You guys did an awesome job this summer. So thank you.
Good, thank you. I also enjoyed the video about how my water meter works. I accidentally sent it to a bunch of people instead of the amusing, cute pet tricks video that I was supposed to send, and they were all very puzzled about it, but I'm sure they enjoyed it. My question was, your report said that the usage peaked at 20,495 cubic meters per day on July 27th. I was wondering how that compares to previous years. How has our peak usage changed?
I don't have 2029 value in front of me. Actually, I do. I'll grab it right now. The peak has been decreasing over time. And 2029, excuse me,
2029, 2019.
or 2019, sorry. 2019, we peaked at 18,000 cubic meters a day, 18,152 cubic meters a day. So we're a bit lower in 2019.
But if you compare it, for example, in addition to that, if you compare it to way further back in 2012, 2013, we were easily doing 27, 2018, 27, 29 million cubes a day. So there's a significant reduction in the total capacity we need to put out through our plants. And that's actually reducing a lot of strain on the treatment plant and treatment process itself, which is really beneficial.
And I was just going to ask, what is the capacity of the treatment plant?
Top of my head, 24, 25.
So it was operating at beyond peak capacity for a while there, but
Yeah.
it appears that our conservation measures have been successful.
Our conservation measures has resulted in that there's currently no immediate need to expand our treatment capacity at the Chapman treatment plant. Yes.
Which is great because that's expensive. I see Director Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a curiosity question. I note that Gray Creek was not utilized in 2020, and I was just wondering why that would be.
Thank you for the question. The reason was that with the other systems in place, we were able to provide the water to the community, and because of the rain events that we had over the summer, the turbidity levels in Gray Creek were such that we were not able to really use it. We need a long period of no rain, so that all the turbidity is settled out of Gray Creek before we can actually draw water from it. And we had several weak events over the summer, which caused the water to constantly be too turbid for us to actually easily use.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yeah, just a question, two questions actually, or a question and a comment. One is on compliance and enforcement. I noticed that the numbers are reasonable in terms of compliance. The table on page 89 shows properties where compliance issues came up. But I wonder how many of those on an annual basis, in terms of the process used, is explained on page 88, that you start off with the process of warnings and education, warnings, and fines. Do those warnings get recorded in terms of the subsequent year? For example, if you go to somebody this year and you issue them a warning for water, do they start fresh next year? And or are they become a repeat offender next year? And you say, look, we talked about this 6 months ago and you did nothing about it, and we're back. It just seems that I just wonder if people get a free ride in every year sort of thing to have one warning, or if we're actually compiling that history.
Okay. Water criminal record.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. We do track the warnings that are by property each year, and do keep that in mind for the following year for follow-up to see if a fine would be the next step.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I just wouldn't want anybody to kind of be repeating that opportunity. They get one free ride every year. The second thing I thought is looking at this, being that we are at the end of the season, essentially, is there any advantage to, and I'm just kind of thinking it aloud, to incorporating or including similar data from the Gibsons relative for comparison purposes of a fully metered system in terms of volumes of water used per household and things of that nature, just so that on an annual basis, you can look back and look at the entire Sunshine Coast in one document, as opposed to having to go to two different jurisdictions to find that information out.
the question.
I think there's nothing stopping us from doing that next year. I think in comparison, I think it's good to realize that the average meter data, especially on the meter side, no, I think we can do it. But I can work with staff at the town of Gibson to see what we can do there.
Yeah, the information's available, and I thought it would be a complete picture. You got everything.
Except Eastbourne.
And it's an excellent report, by the way. The level of detail there is just really good to be able to monitor that.
Thank you. I see Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to pick up on Director Beamish's comments, and town of Gibson's, I believe, is over 50% multifamily. Rural districts are mostly single family, so it's an interesting comparison how to compare the various jurisdictions and their water consumption. So yeah, I think it might be it's desirable. I think it might be a challenge to actually get are we trying to talk about how much does the Sunshine Coast use as a whole? How much does each jurisdiction? So yeah, I'm interested in the data as well, but I think there are some just differences between the natures of the areas, but particularly the multifamily and single family. But my question was about lawn watering permits. Significant drop over the last 2 years. We're down to 31 permits. The fee stays at $50. So I guess I'm wondering, are staff seeing, why are people not applying? Are people feeling that lawns are not a sustainable landscaping feature now? Is it single family, multifamily? Do we track kind of who's putting in lawns? I guess, and is the fee there to cost recovery, or is it there for an administrative charge? Like I'm wondering what the fee is there to try to do.
Happy to help answer. Thank you, Chair, for the question and committee. The fee is based on a cost recovery estimate. So there's no gains on that fee. We could do further analysis of who is applying for lawn permits. That's not something that we have at this point, but we do have access to that information in our records. But in general, starting from years ago, the Golden Lawn Award, there's been a gradual shift, including the recent modifications to the drought response plan regulations, around shifting away from green lawns in the summer on the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you. I see Director Ties.
Yeah, mentioning lawns, I'm just wondering if staff has reached out to the installers of lawns, like the spray on lawn people and all those kind of professionals, because I remember when I got my lawn put in by the spray on lawn folks, they didn't even tell me that I needed to apply for a lawn watering permit, or that restrictions may actually influence what my plans were, and I think they do it all summer long. So I'm just wondering if staff has reached out to them.
This summer we did do some direct email to landscapers with the progression of each stage, so they could communicate that to the customers. I don't know if we've done outreach related to the lawn permits, though.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions, and green bins are on the horizon, so I think we can wrap this up. We were just receiving the report for information, so thank you. Next item is preliminary participation summary in the green bin program. Ms. Cooper, I believe you're up.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to present findings from a review of preliminary participation in the SCRD's new green bin program that launched October 6, 2020. The green bin program is a weekly curbside collection service for food and food soil paper for SCRD residences within electoral areas B, D, E, and F. Concurrently, garbage collection was reduced to every other week. These services are initiatives in the SCRD Solid Waste Management Plan and Regional Organics Diversion Strategy. The goal being to divert food waste from the landfill to composting. This saves valuable landfill space, reduces landfill-related GHGs, and beneficial compost is produced. The summary report includes 2 weeks of curbside participation surveying, as well as 5 weeks of data for both the green bin and garbage collection. Some of the highlights from the staff report and summary report include that participation in week 2 was around 80%. The total food waste collected over the first 5 weeks of the green bin was 61.54 tons. Over 2 every other week garbage collections, garbage tonnage has reduced by over 40%. Contamination was observed to be low at the curbside as well as at the compost facility. And thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Okay, folks. Questions, Director Ties?
Thank you, staff, and thank you, Chair. Page 92, there is a observed participation graph. I'm just wondering if you guys keep track of by electoral area, whether there's large differences between the more urban ones, especially, and the more rural ones, and who I would assume have more composting on site. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So the participation graph that you're referring to on page 92 is divided by day of collection. So Wednesday is Half Moon Bay. Tuesday and Thursday are a combination of electoral areas. So we don't have it specifically by area, but by the collection route.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested in finding that 40% is organics and 60% is garbage, which is quite helpful in understanding that perhaps we are extending the life of our landfill. I guess, though, that it's probably more likely volume that's the issue rather than weight, but I was curious about that. So my question is, can we directly relate weight to volume, or is volume a better measure?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the impact of the landfill, we'll know more early in the new year as we conduct our annual analysis of the Seashell landfill. And then obviously over the course of 2021, so the numbers that we receive in 2022, will incorporate a full year's worth of curbside collection of food waste in the Seashell landfill. And that does look at it in a volume methodology. And then that would also incorporate the District of Seashell when their program comes online as well.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Next up is Director Hiltz.
Thank you. Yeah. Total success. That's all I see here. This is just an awesome rollout and project and great results. So I got 2 questions. One is I'm trying to, in order to understand the participation rate, I'm looking for like the total number of green bins that were distributed. I'm looking at page 99 of the reports, and it talks about a household count of 5,800. So I'm just trying to figure out like what is the total number of green bins went out. Because in the past, the number of electoral properties with garbage collection curbside was around 5,300. So I'm just looking for a number there. And the other question is, what is the methodology that this program will roll into it's called the CARIP, the CARIP report. That's a corporate something that you have to report each year for the 2020. So this is one of those items that's in that report, greenhouse gas emissions through food waste. So the methodology for conversion and then the total number of green bins that were distributed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I may default to.
And the CAREP report?
Thank you for the care question. Unfortunately, our care specialist just left the meeting. Rob Shea is that. But what I know is that it will be included. There will be a reduction as a result, because it's not going to the landfill. There will be a reduction on the food, on the organics component in next year's care reporting.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Director Hill?
Yeah, so I am looking at page 99. So what I see is, so if you have 50, we'll round it to 5,900, and the total checked was around 4,700. So what I see is that there's potentially 1,100 properties that have a green bin and garbage, and they might not be using this service. That's like, I'm trying to understand who's contributing to the pile, and so I'm going, 11, is that a reasonable conclusion to go that there's 1,100 properties that didn't participate in putting out a green bin or a garbage can on the first week?
Staff.
Thanks for the question. So highlighted in that same paragraph references some limitations to the data collection. So as staff followed the truck as best as they could, if there's a long driveway, or if the bin hadn't been placed out yet, or sort of those types of circumstances. So that references the differences between the number of green bins distributed and the ability to actually observe them. So it's a limitation in the data. But I would highlight that from the anecdotal report from the collection contractor, they're estimating between 80 and 90%, and they're the folks that are doing the collection.
And I'm just going to jump in and point out that not everybody puts out every bin every week. And my question, actually, since I'm in control, is how does the participation rate of 80% compare to the normal garbage participation rate per week?
Thanks for the question. That's not something that staff has tracked historically. So the comparative participation would be what's reflected in this report.
Okay.
So that's why that it was conducted over the week where there was green bin and garbage, and staff will be conducting a similar participation survey 3 times per year, and it will be during a week that is garbage and green bin collection, so that both sets of data can be collected, and then also references whether or not somebody is home. Because if there's no bins out, chances are they're not home and they're not participating that week.
Sure. Or we put out our garbage every 4 or 5 or even 6 weeks. So, and lots of people do. So we don't know. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is from the bottom of page 100, where it says the most common source of contamination observed were plastics such as bags, and included what appeared to be a range of types from recyclable, compostable, and biodegradable plastic bags. How do we deal with that? I mean, we think we're doing a good thing in that we're using, compostable bags or, biodegradable bags, and yet they're not to be included in here. How do we deal with that? Both on the consumer side, right? And then on the composting side.
Staff.
Thanks for the question. It's a complex one. So thus far, the SCRD's program is paper only, and that's exactly why. There are all types of bags that are available in the marketplace, and they are not necessarily compostable. Biodegradable may or may not be compostable. It would have to be stamped certified compostable. And as staff, or even as the SCRD, that's outside of our abilities to monitor or mandate that. So through our social media and our communications and all of our outreach, it's been focused on using paper. And then we have taken inquiries from residents as well as a few local businesses and advised the parameters of the program. And then in the case of within this report, those photos, those bins were left behind, so they were not collected.
Okay, second question, page 105. This is in the actual survey or the report put together. And it says, the concerns with every other week garbage, and two particular, I know we talked about these initially when we were looking at implementing the program, was families with diapers and families with, you know, cat litter. How are we dealing with those? How are we making it so that they can actually get rid of that waste?
Staff.
Thanks for the question. So following up from the previous two sort of presentations that staff have provided to the committee on the green bin, sort of reiterating that if you have over the weight or the volume, so it's up to the 77 liter can, up to 20 kilos or 44 pounds, then the extra garbage sticker can be utilized. So currently the price is $2.50. You can put out as many additional cans if you'd like, as long as they have that extra garbage tag on it. As well, residents can self-haul to the Seashell landfill. You'd be able to bring, depending on the weight of the bag, you could bring 3, 4, possibly even 5 for the $5 minimum.
I think the issue is the volume, right? So storing that, I mean, I can imagine, I don't have small kids anymore, but I can imagine what it would be like storing that for a few weeks. Not necessarily an ideal solution, but I guess that's what we're dealing with now.
Thank you. I see Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the same vein, it says on page 102 that approximately 40% of garbage placed curbside included the use of extra garbage tags. That seemed like a shockingly high number to me. And I know I have a very small sample size, but you know, our household of 3 probably needs to empty our bin about once every 6 weeks. Our neighbor has 4 adults and 2 children, and they said they've had to make some adjustments, but they're making it work with bi-weekly. So I'm shocked that so it seems to be that people are just lazy and diverting in if it's 40%. Now I can see, you know, cat litter or diapers being an issue. That being said, there are also cloth diaper options, which my wife and I used when our daughter was small. But of course, that takes some extra dedication and some willingness to handle poop in excessive amounts. But I am shocked at the 40%, and I do feel like maybe some education and some needs to be. Somehow we need to inform the public that whatever they're throwing away, a lot of it can be recycled.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee.
Yes, my comments were along the lines of Director Ties, except that I do know when I do the math here that we picking it up every 2 weeks is actually, and having curbside organics is going to increase the volume by 20% by the math, because when we were picking it up every week, we presumably we're taking care of it, including the organics. And now by going to every second week, we've got a 20% left over from the organics week that has to be picked up in the second week. So we're probably exasperating the problem strictly by the way we are splitting the use of the pickup. But I don't know how you would deal with it, but maybe Director Ties is right. A little bit of education and a little bit more recycling might fix that problem. Thank you.
And I was just wondering how the 40% of extra garbage tags compared to how many garbage tags were being used before that? Do we know?
Thanks for the question. This is something that staff will be monitoring. So we do have historical sales data around the garbage tags. So has there been an increase in 2020? There has been a small increase in the sales. So we'll see over the course of 2021 when the program will be in place for more than just 5 weeks worth to be able to compare over time what the sales looks like. So it doesn't reflect when it's put to the curb, only the sale.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering if there are any compostable alternatives to commercial kitty litter. Are there kitty litter solutions out there that I would not be familiar with?
Thanks for the question. It has more to do with the contents that are within the kitty litter as opposed to what the kitty litter is made from. So there are sort of wood chips, more natural that can be utilized. And I mean, that would be the preference from a usage standpoint and being buried in the landfill, but it has more to do with what's mixed in with the kitty litter. So even if you're using the wood chips or the most natural available on the market, it still can't be composted at the commercial compost level.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. We always seem to get back to solid waste in all of these discussions. Director Hiltz.
Thanks. Yeah, the 40% tickets in week 3 is interesting, and there was also a reduction in garbage during that week, almost like a 40% reduction. So even putting out extra cans, there was still a significant reduction in garbage. So yeah, interesting data. Like this is a real behavior change for people. And for me, it's the most significant since going from 2 cans to 1 can in terms of my experience in dealing with my solid waste. So yeah, we're all having to going, how do we throw? But it does seem to follow the user pay. If you got extra garbage, you put on the ticket, it shifts it to a user pay model. So for me, it looks like it's working well.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Just like to say that the data is really promising for the first few weeks. It'll be really interesting to watch that continuation of behavioral changes. It's one thing, we always come back to solid waste and one of the comments I made when we were doing the agenda review is we don't talk enough about what we're throwing out. So whether or not we're flushing it or sending it in a garbage bin, we really do need to talk to the behavioral changes and look at that as a communication for communication out to the public. As a society, we completely overuse and just don't think about that end result. And until we look at what we're actually consuming and what we're looking at wasting, either through our green bin program, our garbage program, our wastewater treatment plants, we need to have a more robust conversation about this and about how we deal with this as a government across the coast. But the data is it's fantastic, very promising, and I know there's a lot of I still opening up my email to some angst about the program, about the green bin program, but overall I'm hearing a lot of really positive. I didn't want to do it, but I'm really glad it's here. So
okay, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. More an observation than a direct question, but I'd be curious to know how much of the garbage that's going out is actually recyclable materials. Thinking about where our depots are on the coast, if you don't have a car, they're extremely hard for you to get your recycling to. Even the Gibson's recycling depot is not directly on the bus route. You do still have a couple blocks worth of walking to do with your bags and boxes of recycling if you've taken the bus. So I'd be curious to know, and we've got garbage audits that happen from time to time or that are going to be coming up for 2021. It'd be interesting to know how much of this is actually recyclable materials that people just either don't want to be bothered or can't physically facilitate taking to the recycling depots.
Or are confused about, since the recycling rules keep changing, like crinkly plastic, things like that. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I can recall quite a number of years ago when Abbotsford actually implemented their program. Now, I'm not advocating that we go here, but when Abbotsford implemented their program, they required everybody to put their garbage in clear plastic bags so that they could start looking at, what was happening, what were they putting in there? Were they actually recycling the materials that they could, right? But that's the effort, the route they took, and they would actually then fine people for putting things in their clear plastic bags to go to the landfill that could actually be recycled. I like my black plastic bags.
Having read some of the Facebook threads, I noticed that one of the continuing themes is confusion over what jurisdiction people live in. And, people are saying, why didn't I get my green bin? And somebody else will say, that's because you live in Seashell. So, I hope the app helps with that. But the only answer in the long run is to be more consistent across jurisdictions so that people don't have to figure out these details. Anyway, thank you very much for the green bin update. Next up on the agenda is the tipping fee review. And who is presenting for that? Okay, Ms. Cooper again.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Recently, staff conducted a review of the materials received for diversion at SCRD facilities and compared the tipping fees to the updated costs that result from completing tender processes or contract extensions earlier this year. So this is the same approach that was taken in 2018, the last time this type of a review was conducted. So the purpose of this report is to inform the committee of the results of the tipping fee review and to provide recommendations for updating the tipping fees that are identified in SCRD bylaw 405. And thank you, and staff welcome the opportunity to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. That is many tipping fees. And we have questions popping up all over. So Director Tyes, you're first up.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the metal tipping fees, $140 per ton, just slightly off of the $150 per ton, and apparently the rationale is that if it's the same tipping fee, there's less financial incentive to separate the materials for recycling and disposal. And I would think that $10 per ton isn't enough of an incentive to actually do that. So not to mention that when small trucks come in, they're probably going to go from bin to bin and just huck it in anyway. So I would think that $150 per ton would save those people that are actually trying to do the right thing from rescaling, and the people that aren't going to care are not going to be bothering with rescaling anyway. That I guess also goes for the big trucks, because when the big trucks come from construction sites, they're just going to dump it all. They're not going to bother going through twice because the client ends up paying for the whole thing anyway. So I don't think that $10 is enough of an incentive. I don't know if staff has any comments on that.
Staff, please.
Thanks for the question. I really, it's the committee's discretion as to whether or not to accept the recommendations as presented or to make a change to the recommendation. So that's why they're laid out for each item. under the recommendations. So you've highlighted some of the sort of the pros and cons around whether the tipping fee for metal should be 140 or 150. But ultimately, it's the committee's direction as to what the tipping fee should be.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Bottom of page 115, second last paragraph. It talks about indirect costs. So when we are setting these fees, my assumption was, prior to reading this report, that we would include the indirect costs like staffing, overhead, etc. But what this is telling me, and I'm just looking for confirmation, this is telling me is that we have the municipal solid waste function that everybody contributes to, which is then used to cover off the indirect costs. Do we also have municipal solid waste fees that, or taxes, whatever, that go to actually subsidize some of these other costs? So I guess there's two parts to that.
Staff?
I will take first crack at this, and manager can add to this. Yes, indirect costs are currently funded by MSW, Municipal Solid Waste, and and all tipping fees ultimately go in one pot. So it could be that any deficits on one of the materials can also be funded by or another material type or MSW. So we don't have, let's say, separate bank accounts where we track the expenditures per item. It's all one big pot. So yes, MSW rates have been over the past several years. For example, for those where we identified that they were too low, for example, the metal, and most likely MSW or other materials have been supporting the cost for the version of one specific item material.
So that, I mean, this philosophically then, we as a board, I mean, one of the concerns we have is that when tipping fees get high, people are dumping stuff in the woods. But if we actually look at that whole picture, then that's actually looking at how much of the direct fees do we want to potentially be subsidized by municipal solid waste charges, and how much do we want to have coming from the actual tipping fees. So to this point, we're saying tipping fees cover the actual items, but that not necessarily where we may want to end up. So that's just, I just want to kind of put that out there because we're coming into budget. During budget is when these kinds of things we have to talk and look at.
On that note, if I may respond to that, Hiltz comment is that MSW rates, as indicated in the report, has not changed since 2013. As part of our review of future waste disposal options, we're going to take a closer look at that as well, also in light of what the potential cost would be for any of the future options and any investments required there. So it is MSW rate has not been set, and increasing the MSW rate would have an impact not only on the refuse collection budget of the SJW, but also on those of the town of Gibsons and District.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. No, I get that. I mean, I guess when we increase the rate on the mattresses, for example, right? Huge, it was just a big conversation in the community around that. So I think we just need to be more aware of, or be aware of which I don't know if we have been, be aware of kind of that tipping point for the community, because we don't want it in the woods. We don't want to have to do more trash bash events and things. We'd rather it come to the landfill. Where is that line, I think, is what we need to just be aware of. Bigger conversation. Thank
you. I see Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of to follow up on Director Seegers' comment, there are jurisdictions that actually don't charge for regular household garbage at all if you self-haul up to the landfill. And East Kootenay, I think, is one of those areas, and I can imagine that that's probably a lot of the logic that went into that. Is if it's free, you've got no excuse not to get rid of it up at the dump. That being said, there will always be people that just dump it in the bush because it's easy. I think I agree with Director Tyson. I know we talked about this before when we looked at the metal fees. Looking at $140 versus $150 a ton. You've got $140 a ton incentive to not get rid of it at the landfill. We do have bypass for now that takes scrap metal in for free or for a very small charge. And so I think I look at aligning those two fees as a streamlining staff and process. If I come up to the dump and I've got a bunch of garbage and a barbecue, I have to go through the scale 3 times. I have to weigh in, and then I have to weigh for my metal, and then I have to weigh out. Whereas if it's all under one rate, I only have to scale twice. So that saves on time and lineups, et cetera, at the landfill. Just curious about other directors' thoughts on that. But I'll leave it there. I did have a question, but it's gone. So.
Okay, I'm just going to comment that during trash bashes, I noticed how many propane tanks there are out in the woods. And I also noticed that the tipping fee increase for the medium-sized propane tanks is $2 to $10. That's a pretty big increase. And I'm wondering if that would be a disincentive. Does bypass take propane tanks?
Thanks for the question. I'm not certain. Likely would take them if they've been punctured, but I would have to confirm with bypass. So the SCRD has a contract to have somebody come on site and basically devalve all of our propane tanks to ensure that they are safe to then be deposited into the scrap metal bin. So I'm not certain whether bypass would take them or not.
Sure. That makes good sense. Okay, Director Tice.
Yeah, I had that same question whether bypass takes propane tanks, but the question I have, and I don't know if there's any research out there as to, here we are charging $150 per ton and people are dumping this amount of garbage into the woods. I'm wondering as to what the threshold is for people dumping more garbage in the woods. I can see the argument that if we didn't charge at all, that there would be less garbage being dumped in the woods, but I don't see people suddenly going, oh, now it's up to 170 a ton. I'm going to turn around and drive up into the woods now. Like there's always going to be people that are going to be driving their garbage up into the woods as long as money is being charged. So I wonder, if there's any research out there that tells us, okay, well, what's the marginal rate of increase that we can do without substantially increasing the amount of garbage being dumped in the woods. And I think my thought is that whether we charge 150 or 170, I don't think the rates of garbage being dumped in the woods are going to go up substantially.
Okay, Director Beamish.
Yeah, just a comment. I do believe bypass does take the used containers. I have seen they have a section out there that and I think they try to crush them at some point. They must have a way of taking the gas out.
Propane. Okay, thank you. Director Lee.
I suspect they opened the valve. Anyways, I was just curious about cardboard. I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around it. $285 per ton as opposed to $150 for garbage. Cardboard can be dropped off for free at our recycling station. And if we bring it up to this rate, are we going to bury our recycling stations in cardboard? I suspect we already are actually greatly increasing. And the 285 per ton then basically is a levy against our businesses, because they're the ones that can't drop it off at the recycling rate now unless we get the government regulations changed. I'm interested in if Ms. Cooper or Mr. Rosenboom have any comments on the cardboard, and if there's some actual solution in sight.
Staff, please.
Thanks for the question. It's a really good discussion around extended producer responsibility and what should or shouldn't be in the recycling regulation. So as of right now, you're correct in that the 3 depots that are on the Sunshine Coast are for residential materials only. So cardboard can be dropped off at no cost from the residential sector only. If you are from the commercial sector, then you would need to hire a local company to collect it. So there is one in Pender Harbor, and then there's only one company that's servicing the rest of the Sunshine Coast. So that's one option. Or the other option would be to self-haul it as a commercial business to the Seashell landfill or the Pender Harbor transfer station. But through the tipping fee review, to be full cost recovery of the direct costs only, it's $285 per ton to cover the hauling as well as the processing costs, because those costs apply because that material is not being collected through the provincial program.
Right. Okay. Director Ties.
Yeah, I was actually going to move the recommendations with a change of $140 per ton to $150 per ton for metal. So that is my suggestion for moving the recommendations.
I see the motion. I see a seconder. Do we have any further discussion of the recommendations? Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I remembered my question. Do we have, no, we have a penalty for mixed loads that are not separated, correct?
Staff?
Thanks for the question. If the material is listed in the bylaw as recyclable or controlled, then the fee or the levy of 2 times the tipping fee would be applied.
Okay, so a follow-up question to that real quick then. Is cardboard and scrap metal listed within that penalty program?
Thanks for the question. Metal is, cardboard will be. So at a previous committee meeting, that was one of the recommendations, and it was adopted by the board. So in conjunction, when this bylaw is updated with these tipping fees, as mentioned in the report, that portion of the bylaw will be amended as well to include cardboard as a recyclable material.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I was just thinking about the motion to increase metal to 150. I believe our intent is for metal to be tracked to solid waste, and I think we're having a solid waste review, so we might end up with a difference between the two, which is not what we're looking for. I was wondering if we should say something like metal be the same as solid waste to avoid that problem in the next iteration.
Aha, a process question. Staff, please.
Thanks for looking for that type of a clarification. So metal is a separate material type as defined in the bylaw, and therefore is a separate code in our system at the Seashell landfill and the Pender Harbor transfer station. So the materials are currently tracked, like metal is tracked separately. So whatever the tipping fee is does not affect the tracking ability.
Okay. But I thought the question...
to answer the question from the director in addition to what my manager already indicated, we could specify that the tipping fee for metal be increased from $70 to the current rate for municipal solid waste.
That wasn't a motion. Staff don't usually make the motions. We have a motion on the floor. Is that a request to amend the motion on the floor? And who is requesting it? Director Toth.
I will put forward an amendment that the tipping fee for metal be increased to match municipal solid waste disposal or garbage, whatever the specific term is.
Excellent. And I see a seconder. Do we have any discussion of that amendment? Seeing none, I'd like, Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I just want to ask staff does this confuse things or make things simpler? I guess that's what I'm just trying to, by tying it with the MSW versus its own separate number. Does it confuse or unconfuse?
Staff?
Thanks for the question. If the intent is to always have metal match the tipping fee of municipal solid waste, then I believe that is achieved through this current motion. So if MSW increases to 160 or 170, that means metal will increase as well. If that's the intent.
Alternatively, staff could make a note, and when if an MSW increase would be recommended, review at that point in time or bring forward the discussion on metal as well.
And I'm thinking, because the price of metal has rocketed around so much in recent years, that we might be better to stay with the dollar amount rather than tie it to the solid waste. But I see that your hand is still up, Director Hiltz. Did you have an observation? All right, I think we're really confused now. So we're going to vote on the amended motion, or the amendment to the motion. So all in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any opposed to the amendment? 3 opposed, but that passes. So on with the motion on the floor. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing no further hands, I'm going to call the motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And my computer went to sleep. Not that this was dull. Not at all. Okay. Tipping fees. Green waste drop-off depot operations update Annex F. Staff, please. Who's doing this one? Is it Ms. Cooper again? It's your day.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the agreement with the town of Gibsons for the long-term use of the current location of the South Coast Green Waste Drop-Off Depot, as well as to seek direction to maintain service continuity as the current arrangement with the town of Gibsons for operations of the site expires December 31st of this year. Thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
I'd like to thank the town of Gibsons for stepping in and supporting this program. And I'd be happy to move the recommendations on page, whatever this page number is, 120.
And I see a seconder. So we have a motion on the floor. I'm just going to mention that I would very much like to see an audit of the operations of the green waste site to find out who is tipping according to what electoral area they live in, what they're tipping, what they're dumping, for instance, whether it includes invasive plants, what kind of volumes we're looking at for the people who are using it, like what's the range. Some people may be coming in with one basket. And approximately what the split is between residential and commercial. Because right now we're making a lot of decisions based on really no data. I'll put that over to staff.
Thank you for the question. As indicated, I think staff, I think the board is aware that the work plan for the solid waste division is pretty full, will be pretty full next year, as it was this year. So the staff capacity required to undertake a survey like this is currently limited. We of course can look what we can defer, but it also depends on what will be approved as part of the budget process. So currently the staff, it's not that staff are not willing to undertake the survey or see the benefit of it. It's more a work capacity issue at the moment. So if the board would like to, we can explore what would be required and to advance that and potentially connect with staff at the town of Gibson, see if there is any collaboration possible, and report back if there is a financial implication at round one in terms of a budget proposal, and it can then be considered for the board if they would like to do that investment or not.
In that case, I'm chairing. Would somebody like to move that staff bring forward a report on the possibility of auditing the green waste?
Point of order, we have a motion on the floor right now.
We have a motion on the floor. That's correct. Thank you, Director Seeger. So we will continue discussing the motion as it is on the floor, and I will recognize Director Ties.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I was there yesterday, and it was satisfactory as usual. And I think that brings my number of pickup truck loads to 4 this year, I think. So I'm a grateful user of the facility. That being said, we're providing nothing more than convenience and some greenhouse gas reductions at great expense, because you could drive it all the way up to Seashelt and get rid of it for free there. So I am somewhat in favor of maybe setting up just an honor pay system with a sign saying, communicating that, you know, this is set up for your convenience, and this is and maybe $10 per pickup truck load and $5 per pail or per garbage bin full of green waste, just to support the operation. And I think a lot of people will probably be willing to throw that in. And so I think, you know, there is something to be said for having that convenience, but I also think that I don't know how fair it is for all the taxpayers of the coast to be paying for that convenience. So those are just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Director Ties. And let's deal with the motion that's on the floor for the moment. Is there any further discussion of the motion on the floor? If not, I ask for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you. I would like to see a motion requesting a staff report on auditing the users of the Green Waste Service and looking at options for user pay, whether that would be coupons like the extra garbage bin system. Over to staff.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the committee there already is a board resolution to bring forward a report looking at ways to fund the entire green waste service. So that portion, we already have a resolution, and that will be brought forward once procurement has been completed for the operations at the South Coast Drop-Off Depot.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So it's just, we're looking for more data on the, who is using the site and the volumes and so forth. I'm looking
So-
for someone,
So Director McMahon, you could actually make that recommendation. As chair, you can still make
oh,
recommendations.
I can?
Yes, you can.
God. All right. Recording secretary, have you made anything out of my incoherent mumblings?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, right now I have that staff perform an audit at the South Coast Green Waste drop-off site to determine who is using the facility, what material is being dropped off, including invasive species, the volume, and approximately the split between commercial and residential green waste users.
That's wonderful. It's like you read my mind. Do we have a seconder?
Remco has his hand up.
The motion as it is now is that we are going to do it. And my suggestion was that given staff capacity, we would confirm the feasibility and financial implications at round one. So my suggestion to amend the motion or for the motion would be that staff will bring back forward a report at round one to confirm the feasibility and financial implications, and then the rest that Tracy Olson already had listed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's just what I meant. Director Seeger?
I'll second that as it is now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do we have any further discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Let me see where we are. We've got one more green waste one, the green waste hauling service, which is Annex G. Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The SCRD issued RFP 2035009 for green waste container and hauling services. The RFP sought qualified companies to provide container and transportation services for the SCRD's green waste recycling program. Proposals could be submitted for any or all of the drop-off locations. It sought proposals for a contract term of 3 years with an option to renew up to 2 additional 1-year terms. 3 compliant proposals were received. The evaluation committee reviewed and scored the proposals against the criteria as set out in the RFP, and staff recommend that a contract be awarded to Salish Environmental Group, Inc., as their proposal was the best value overall for the service. So the purpose of this report is to award a contract for this RFP. And thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. I see Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'll move recommendations as on page 123.
And I see a seconder. Is there any discussion, Director Lee?
Yes, I just had a few notes before we vote on this. I was wondering, when we have these proposals like this, if we could have the historical cost included as well, so we can understand what's happening to us over the years. I'm kind of curious about that. I know that it isn't our standard, but I think it would be valuable for us to know. And so is that something that could happen?
Staff?
Yes, I will. We'll make sure staff will ensure that in future this type of award reports, the historic rates are included as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Director Hiltz. Oh, staff, sorry. Just Ms. Cooper.
Thanks. I also wanted to add that, yeah, we'll definitely include that information. About halfway down page 124, it is the listed for the 2020 budget is listed, which was $89,000. So that would be the current or the approved budget for the hauling. So that would be what's in the budget for this year.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, over to Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a question about the duration of the contracts and what industry is saying So private sector needs some stability in contracts, investment of procedures and equipment. And are you getting feedback that these are good terms, like 3-year guaranteed? If you do a good job, we'll keep going for it. So a 5-year outlook is kind of what industry is looking for continuity of contracts. Typically, is that sort of the industry standard, I guess, and it works on the Sunshine Coast.
Staff, please.
Thank you for the question. It's always, as per our procurement policy, we have some policies to guide us as well on this one. What we're looking for is long-term contracts where possible and where realistic, to reduce our own administrative workload and to provide security to the contractor. So in this case, 3 plus 2 years extension would provide that certainty, the maximum certainty we can provide under our current procedures to a contractor.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Just make a comment, and I have raised this in the past, that if we were looking at this at the municipal level, we would see the numbers for all 3 bidders. And so that we would understand the relationship and partially why the decision was made. So that I know the SCRD doesn't do that. There's not a anything to prohibit that being done. It's just that I have no idea what the other bidders bid, who they were, and so that it's just one of those things that I have raised it before, and I understand you don't do that. So just to mention.
Staff?
Thank you for mentioning it. It's not legally, it's not possible for us to do it in a public meeting.
If you go on BC Bid, you'll see it all the time, and that's open bidding as well. That you see what everybody bids.
Okay. Director Lee.
Yes, I'm with Director Beamish. I would like to have that information before making a decision. It's to me, it's a rule of thumb thing so that you can be comfortable with your decision. If we have to go in camera to have the information, so be it. But I do believe it should be there. I had a question about value for dollar earlier in the comment, and the best value, I believe, was the word, and I don't know what that means. Did they offer something more than the others? And I think the dollar value would do that. So I'm definitely would like to speak in favor of that. Anyways, like to hear what others think.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm with Director Beamish on this. And I know that recently we had our tender come back on our public works building. I think there were 5 proponents that actually met the criteria. All 5 were listed with the dollar value that they had indicated. I don't remember if it was in camera or in public, but I know that that information was provided to us. So it can be released somehow, somewhere. So I think that's the legalities that we're wanting you to look at.
This sounds like a policy discussion. I'm wondering if we should kick this over to the CAO for follow-up. Do we need a motion? Do we need to? I'm not seeing a motion.
Yeah, if there was, we would need to investigate how we would bring that information forward. It's not, if it's done in Gibson's and Seashelt, I can look at that. I can look at it from an RD perspective. It's not something that we did in Mackenzie. Staff didn't include the other bids. Staff have a procurement policy that's followed, including a review for bids, and based on that review, it would be brought to council for decision. If the board would like us to look at an alternative way of viewing bids, that includes all of the bids. Dollars aren't the only consideration when determining the best values. So I can look at it if so directed.
I'm not seeing a motion on the floor at the moment. Director Seegers.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that staff investigate information that's provided with regards to bids or tenders for a view to providing more information to the board on who actually bid on it and dollar values and potentially criteria that determined which, because I understand what CAO is saying. It's not just the price. We would then want to say, okay, based on the criteria, you know, this is why we chose this or that other one. And then whether or not it comes forward in a closed meeting or an open meeting would depend on, I mean, that would be up to them. So I don't know how you put that in a motion, but that's kind of what we're looking for.
Okay, I am just going to go to recording secretary to see if you have sufficient to craft a motion at this point.
It's not formulated, Chair, but I do have enough information. I have notes that bids or tenders be provided for more information to directors regarding dollar values, criteria used to determine bids.
The award.
Success.
Okay, I see Jim Rosenboom.
Alternative wording that staff bring back report on the feasibility to provide more details on evaluation criteria and outcomes of tendering processes.
Sorry, I'm kind of okay with that, but I'm not looking at the feasibility. I want to see how to make it happen.
Okay.
Because I know it can happen. We get it at, you know, so how does it happen? How do we make that happen?
Yeah.
Right? Is it closed meeting? Is it open meeting? What information can be, you know, I know it's feasible.
So the staff bring back a report on the process too.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
That sounds good, yes.
A seconder for the motion, first off. Yes, I see a seconder. Okay, Director Hiltz.
Yeah, so for me, what we're trying is to increase the board's oversight on contracts over $100,000. That's where the focus is. I understand I would like to be able to say, yes, I am adopting staff's recommendation on this contract over $100,000 and a little bit more information about why I'm doing that. So for me, it's part of the oversight role on the delegation authority that the board has given staff on contracts over $100,000. That's kind of how I'm seeing the scope of the motion. So I think it's kind of captured more, but the focus is on over $100,000 and it's the delegation. So we're talking about the oversight of the delegation on contracts over 100,000.
Okay. I see no further hands. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you. We have one more item regarding solid waste, and I'd like to get that done before we take a break. So the next item on our agenda is disposal of Boats and Rvs pilot project. And over to staff. I'm sorry, Director Lee, you have your hand up. Did you have something that we missed?
I don't remember us passing that recommendation. Did we do that already?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It must have been deep in thought. Thank you.
I think we're good. And I'm pretty sure our recording secretary would nail me to the wall if we didn't do it right. So next up is the report on the Boats and Rvs.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Starting on May 19th of this year, the Seashell landfill started to accept boats and recreation vehicles as a pilot project as per board direction, which included setting tipping fees for boats and recreation vehicles at $265 per ton, as well as instituting conditions for acceptance. Staff have monitored and evaluated this pilot project with information commencing from May 19th to October 30th of this year. The purpose of this report is to present the results of the Boats and Recreation Vehicles pilot project and to seek board direction whether or not the SCRD should continue to accept boats and recreation vehicles for disposal at the Seashell landfill. Thank you, and staff welcome the opportunity to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. I had one. I understand that the options for recycling fiberglass are extremely limited in North America. Are there any options out there available to us other than landfilling?
Thanks for the question. Not that staff are aware of.
Good. Well, not good, actually bad. But Director Ties?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am thrilled that people actually participated in this pilot project and that some vessels were actually landfilled. And I think we do have to find a solution to those vessels other than scuttling them. I guess you can't really scuttle RVs, but I am wondering if we can drop the 1 meter requirement for fiberglass vessels. I think, once all the recyclables have been removed, you should be able to just take them up there, and then the compactor could probably just drive over them. I think, for one thing, it would make it easier for the people trying to dispose of it. And I think it would also make work at the landfill a bit more fun. Thanks.
So we have a question about smudging. Staff?
Thanks for the question. The 1 meter or 4 feet section or less aligns with criteria for pretty much all materials accepted at the Seashell landfill for disposal.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
I'm just wondering, as this program gets more successful and more of these vehicles and boats end up there, are we simply substituting, we're taking the green waste out by tonnage and we're putting tonnage in from boats and RVs? Are we getting ahead on this? Are we saving any life for the landfill?
Over to staff.
Thank you very much for the question. As indicated on page 127, about 8.4 ton was on boats were disposed of as part of this pilot project last several months. While earlier reports, I think, indicated that that's about the amount of food waste, that's less than the amount of food waste that's diverted in a week. So it is, yes, there is additional capacity, there's capacity used by accepting this, but I think the overall benefit to the community, at least from staff perspective, is such that it's better to have these boats in the landfill than somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just think that this program may become more used. There are lots of boats out in the bush. Person who moved out of my house before me left a boat in the yard. It's probably too good to be landfilled right now, but if it stays there much longer, that might be where I'd send it to. So, but it's just one of those things that are we getting ahead? That's all. It's a challenge.
Staff will continue to monitor that, and as part of our annual updates on landfill life, we'll definitely evaluate this program as well. Thank you.
Awesome, very helpful. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations as on page 126.
And I see a seconder. Is there any further discussion of RV smudging or anything else? Seeing none, I'm calling the question. All in favor of this motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you very much. It's now 11.
Can I make one comment? I mean, I love Director Ties' comment. I mean, I'm very visual. And so when you start talking about fun at the landfill for, I mean, I'm seeing these guys driving over boats. Yeah, I get it.
Ah, it's fun. We love our solid waste. So I'm going to call a 10-minute break now. It's 11:10 and we'll be back at 11:20. Okay, so we are resuming our infrastructure committee meeting of November the 19th, 2020. The next item on our agenda is the terms of reference for the Sunshine Coast Transit Future Action Plan. Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Chair. The manager of Transit Fleet was supposed to be here, but he's unfortunately sick today, so I'll take this introduction over. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to introduce this item. At the October 10th, 2019 board meeting, the board adopted the recommendation for the 2020-21 Transit Expansion Memorandum of Understanding, which included staff working to research options and resources required for service expansion in 2021 and 2022, as well as the development of a plan to update the Transit Future Plan that was initially adopted in 2014. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the terms of reference for a Transit Future Action Plan for the Sunshine Coast Transit System. Staff are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. First, it occurs to me that we could refer this report to the Transportation Advisory Committee for their information. Motion, seconded? Seconded. All in favor? Good. What kind of implication does this have for our staff resources as the SCRD? That was my question.
Thank you. As outlined in the plan, the majority of the work will be completed by BC Transit staff. However, there will be a core team which will consist of 2 of our managers supporting BC Transit, as well as we will be that's more on the technical side, and we will be responsible for the engagement with all the stakeholders on the Sunshine Coast, as well as supporting BC Transit in engagement with the public in general. So it will have an impact at our staff levels, but we feel that it is an important plan to develop, especially given that it might provide direction on how to recover from the current COVID situation and get back up to pre-COVID levels as much as we can do that. And I think that strategic direction, that will be one of the benefits of this plan to be developed at this point in time.
Thank you. I see Director Ties.
Chair, I was looking at page 135 under phase 2, right at the bottom of the page. There is an engagement or the engagement plan for online engagement with a platform that's supposed to be open throughout the winter. And I'm wondering whether this should not be done for a full year, just to reflect the seasonal patterns that we have in the use of our transit, considering that in summertime you would probably see more bikers using it, more tourists and such things. I think that it's a little bit myopic to only have it run in the winter time.
Okay, any comments from staff? Or
I think it's a fair observation that transit use in the summer is different than in the winter, especially on the coast with all the tourists and indeed the bicycles. So it's definitely something I can work with BC Transit to see how we can address that.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Same area, little different focus. So if we look at the bottom of page 135, it says the second phase of engagement is proposed to take place in the winter of 2021. But if we go down then to the bottom of page 138, it says fall 2021, finalize and approve the Transportation Futures Action Plan or whatever, right? So if we're still doing engagement, I mean, the timing doesn't work because there's no way we're going to have something to finalize. So there needs to be some work around that.
I can clarify that BC Transit called the period that we're December, January 2020, 2021. That's what they call the winter 2021. So the period, the months ahead, that's what they would call winter 2021, which is a little bit confusing. And I have to say the entire time schedule will have to be revised anyway to address the point Director Thijs was just making and just the reality of where we are currently already and when we would have staff actually available to start even working on this, which won't be until really next year. And that's because our new manager strategic initiatives will play a role in this in terms of the public participation part.
Okay, another piece of this is page 132.
Yeah.
It's got the incomplete and outstanding items. It just lists them. I mean, I think what we as a board would like to know and the community will want to know is what triggered them not moving forward? What was behind them not actually being addressed? Why are they incomplete and outstanding? I mean, I know some of the answers, you know, around funding, etc., but these are on the list. We put them on a list for a reason. Why weren't they addressed?
I'm just going to make a process comment here. I think it's fairly clear, and this came up at agenda review too, that this report is going to need to come back in a revised format to a future committee meeting, because there's a lot of questions about transit that are out there right now. Director Hiltz, or our staff, please.
I would like to respond to Director Seeger's question. What we could do is provide an evaluation of the implementation to date as an evaluation report. I think it's not part of the terms of reference at the moment, but we can work with BC Transit to kick off the process with an evaluation. What happened so far? What was the success? Why were certain things not move forward before we start planning for the future?
Right, because if we look at these incomplete or outstanding items, most of them are focused, well, particularly some of the infrastructure projects, for example, are focused on creating the backbone to do the expansion. And those haven't been done. Even the 30-minute frequency from Seashelt to Langdale was to create that spine to provide the service to Roberts Creek, service to other areas. This hasn't been done. So there had to have been at some point a decision made around the infrastructure and not moving forward with it to create that. And I'd like to know what actually precipitated that.
Thank you. Okay, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the clarification on the timeline. My question is about the stakeholder engagement, and so where is that? That's, I believe on page 134. And the question is, if it's not specified in here, will the scope of the stakeholder consultation, I'm thinking particularly in Gibson's along South Fletcher, which is the section between Dougal Park, and it incorporates the Gibson's District Public Library and the town hall, the museum, that kind of civic area. And there was some changes, so is that going to be captured in the stakeholder, or do we need to change it at this point, or will we wait for this revision to come back? So if we want to make suggestions for stakeholder engagement, do we do it now? Do we need a motion, or do you just take it away?
Thank you for the question. The staff are already working on the list of parties or organization or groups to engage with as part of the engagement process, and any suggestions from directors that they have currently or moving forward. I think there's no recommendation needed. An email with a suggestion would be sufficient for us to include them in our engagement.
So I'll make the suggestion that the Gibson's District Public Library be a part of the stakeholder consultation. I'm not sure if Director Beamish is interested in from the town of Gibson's point of view. Don't know.
And Director Beamish is on the list.
Yes, I am interested in how we how this document can be looked at by our council and our community prior to it being signed off on. Is that anticipated, or there's going to be another iteration of the document, I'm assuming? I think the seniors are another one I'd like to consult with on this, because they're certainly impacted by transportation options in the community. So is this going to come back to us one more time, or is it at this time that I could share this document with our council?
Yeah, process.
It's always good to have a process question. I think what I would recommend is that I'm listening to the discussion. There was a discussion about, there were several questions, so we will update the project. Terms for reference, I think we can bring it to the January TAC meeting. If the referral, given that the referral was made. And then it's up to the board. If my suggestion would be to first bring it back to the board for their endorsement, then present it to the other councils, and then bring it back to the board, maybe in February or March for final adoption.
I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Good. Director Seegers?
Thank you. I think further to what Director Beamish is saying, part of what we and staff will need to put our minds to is which groups in our community do we need to have input from? Like Director Beamish mentioned, the seniors. Definitely need to get it out to the seniors, the schools, right? School district. I mean, staff have got a list like that together, and that will probably be coming forward as part of the program once we've actually identified and approved the terms of reference. Then they will come forward and say, okay, here's our engagement plan around this, and these are all the different groups we're going to be looking at engaging with. And at that point, we're going to need to look at that and make sure that, anybody else that we think should be talked to is actually added to the list.
I'm just going to note that there is a list of stakeholders appended to the 2014 Transit Master Plan. It's a pretty long list, but I think there's probably room for some additions. I'm just going to comment that I spent some time looking through the 2014 Transit Master Plan, and what really struck me is that we have a business plan there, basically, for a $5 million service, but it doesn't identify who our customers are. We don't know who takes the bus. How old are they? How many are they? Are they people who are primarily dependent on the bus, or are they people who are using the bus as the second vehicle for the family? Are they going to work? Are they going to school? Are they going shopping? We don't have any information on our customer base, and I think that's bizarre, frankly. And then the other thing is that we don't have a core target market. We don't. We're trying to expand the reach. We're trying to get more customers, but there's no description of who these customers are that we're trying to attract. It's a very puzzling document from that perspective, and I'm kind of baffled as to why BC Transit hasn't identified that as just one of the very fundamental things that you need to know when you're designing a transit system. Because how can we measure our success? How do we know if we're serving particular communities if we have no idea who's taking the bus? It's very strange. And then we don't know also, they did show in the Transit Master Plan where they got feedback from. And one of the places they got it from was that they went on the bus and questioned people who were taking the bus, which, that makes sense. But we don't have a sense of how much of the feedback really came from the people who are using the system, and how much was just submitted from members of the general public who, like all of us, have a lots of opinions about the system, even if we don't use it very much. I'm further wondering how COVID is going to affect the consultation with users, because there was no mention in the terms of reference of actually going on the bus and talking to passengers, and I realize that's somewhat problematic right now. But if the only sort of engagement is online, then that's going to immediately, bias the information we're getting, because a lot of the more vulnerable population of transit users may not have access to online consultation tools. This is, I'm saying a lot in one go here, but I would really like to see more information. Over to staff.
Thank you for your questions. All the buses currently on the coast, or most of the buses, they have counters that are recording when people are getting on the bus and where do they leave the bus. So we have more information than we had in 2014 about what's the heat pattern of, as it's the word of the day, what's the heat pattern of transit use on the coast. And that will at least give us some clue about why people are taking the bus, because are they going to the hospital, or do they get off in the shopping area, or et cetera, et cetera. So we have some information about it. I agree that there is still part of the information missing in terms of what is actually the nature of our current customer base and our target audience. And so I will discuss with BC Transit how we can improve that research. I know in 2014 they did actually surveys on the bus. So let's see if we can redo that. And in terms of the online engagement platform, we already had discussions about just the survey forms being available on the bus, and that they can be dropped off on the bus as well, just with the driver, and the driver takes them to the office, and then they're entered into the system.
Good, thank you. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, in terms of the recommendations about the plan being, the terms of reference being approved, I'm guessing we're not ready to approve them right now, so we need an alternative recommendation to do something with this terms of reference to have it come back in the future. Is that the intent? Or so when should it come back?
My suggestion would be to change the recommendation to read, I think it's already recommended that it's going to be referred to Transportation Advisory Committee, and that the terms of reference for the Sunshine Coast Future Action Plan will be updated and brought back to a future committee meeting.
Perfect. And I believe that Director Hiltz is moving that. Do we have a seconder? I see a seconder. Excellent. I'm going to raise one more issue. I have discovered that the correct terminology is on-street customer amenities. That's what they call a bus shelter. I have a lot of people in my area who are concerned that we don't have enough bus shelters, and that's one of the barriers to using transit. So we don't have, a bus shelter program. I don't think we have any bus shelters at all in Area E. And so it's a big concern of the community. And I'd sort of like to see that addressed on the infrastructure capital side of that. Yeah.
I can, there's already for 2020 on our work plan was to start working on the bus shelter program. We started working on it in the background, and we are still progressing, but it's pretty slow due to the impact COVID had on the work plan. So it's not that we're not working on it, it's we hope to get back on that track at the same time that we work on this transfer future action plan, because I agree with your comment, there is a connection between the two.
Awesome, good to hear. Thank you. Director Toth.
Follow-up question on the bus shelters. What's the funding source for those? Do we pay for them? Does the BC Transit pay for them, et cetera? If we are paying for them, is it from taxation or are we using gas tax funding for that?
Thank you. There is the province is providing BC Transit an annual amount of money that they can provide to communities for bus shelters. That amount is pretty limited. Maybe if we would have a plan, if we would put in a request, maybe we can get one approved. And anything else we would have to fund ourselves. And we've been contacted by some community organizations as well that they're interested in funding. So we're part of the bus shelter program. Would also be, how can we allow that to happen and deal appropriately with liabilities, risk, and those kinds of things. So it will be most likely a mix between taxation funding, community funding, and BC Transit.
Thank you. And now that we have better information, a heat map, then presumably we know which bus stops are used more frequently. So that helps us set priority. Excellent. Good to hear. Okay, we have a recommendation on the floor. Seeing no further speakers list, I'm calling the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Nobody's opposed. That's awesome. Look at us. We're all the way up to Annex I. No, we're up to Annex J. Impressive. We have received all of the communications. There are, Annex J is the Transportation Committee minutes. There were a couple of recommendations in those minutes. There's recommendation 9 and recommendation 11. Recommendation 9 is that SCRD staff reach out to Modi to set up a meeting at our earliest convenience, which I presume is going to be after cabinet appointments. Is that a reasonable guess? So it's not going to be immediate. And recommendation 11 was a letter of support. Okay, we'll stay on 9. Director Seegers.
Thank you. First, I'll move that that recommendation be forwarded. I guess it will be forwarded to the board. How do we do this? Do we just leave it and it'll come up there? I'm looking at process.
If the board can ask us to action these recommendations.
Right. So these minutes will actually show up at the board? No, they won't. Will they? I thought it's just going to be a line saying we approve them.
No, if the board can, this committee can pull any of these recommendations and request staff to action them, and those recommendations will then go to board.
Okay, so I would like recommendation 9 to be forwarded to the board and be acted on as soon as possible. We may not have, at this point, we may not know who the minister is, but that doesn't mean we can't start going to staff and looking at setting up the meeting. So action as soon as possible.
Fair enough. Do I see a seconder for the motion? I do. Any further discussion? We love to talk to Modi. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the floor? We're all in favor. That passes. Recommendation 11 is a request for a letter of support. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Sherry. I can add an update to this. This is correspondence that I was copied on from Michael Braun to the Langdale PAC. November 12th is the date of it. And at that point, Modi is saying that the engineers have reviewed the request. However, it the intersection does not warrant the requirements for a marked crosswalk. So this is a Modi's analysis at this point. They are looking to improve the signage along that stretch of Port Mellon Highway. And Modi does also say it is still legal to, you can cross the highway anywhere you want, essentially. So they're saying it's not within their guidelines for putting in a crosswalk. So the recommendation to send a letter of support might not bear fruit, I suppose, because Modi is already saying it's not in the scope of their engineering specifications. So that's the update.
Director Pratt.
Thank you. As a parent and a school trustee, I'm thinking of the other example of Madeira Park Elementary, and I think I brought this up at TAC as well. And it took decades to get a crosswalk in. There's definitely needs to be some more safety signage around that area because you drive down that highway, and when you're coming from Port Mellon into Langdale, it's almost like it's a corner, and then all of a sudden it's like a school zone. So, and people are flying down there all the time. So we do need to put some additional advocacy work behind this. I would look to the area director for to be our conduit here. I don't the letter of support. I'm not against a letter, so I think a letter of support would help in any kind of advocacy on this point. I know Director Lee could probably speak more to the Madeira Park Elementary crosswalk. Parents for years were even painting in the middle of the night, painting the crosswalk, and Modi would come along and they would cover it up the next day until they put one in legally. So there's a lot of it is a huge safety concern. Just nobody is following speed limits there, and it's a 50 zone at a bit of a blind corner where children are crossing to go to school. So any kind of advocacy and spotlight we can put on this will help in the long run.
Excellent. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, so I think, I'm not sure, is it possible to expand the scope of the letter from just strictly crosswalk to improve safety? That's what I am, and is that within, we can do that as a board to emphasize the ongoing work with Modi and the improved safety. And there is, I've already written a letter of support for a grant for an active transportation thing going on, a pilot. So I think my recommendation would be to draw attention to the crosswalk, but also to enhance the scope and focus on the safety, the ongoing safety issues. So that would, okay. So pull the recommendation, send the letter, and enhance the scope to include draw attention to the safety. Thank
you, and I see a seconder. And I think that was sufficiently clear that we understand what's going on. Is there any further discussion of this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Good, thank you. Director Beamish?
Yeah, thinking of this crosswalk issue, I wonder if we shouldn't be thinking about when we talk to the minister, and then again when we talk to UBCM about making a recommendation or a motion about the role of local governments in determining where and when crosswalks should be established. I mean, we are the communities that are most affected by decisions to have or not to have a crosswalk relative to the safety of our residents. Yet every time we ask for a crosswalk, we're rebuffed by Modi by a policy, I would suspect, at a staff level, saying, it doesn't warrant a crosswalk. Your analysis, your residents' concerns are unjustified, you're not going to get it. We have a similar issue here in Gibson's where we asked for a crosswalk and it's still not there. And I just wonder if if it's time now, we should actually be asking to take some of that responsibility from the province and onto ourselves in terms of how those decisions are made.
I'm just going to comment that the broader issue here is that there is no requirement for MODI to consult or indeed listen to the concerns of residents in unincorporated areas, particularly also the towns when you're dealing with the highway. But there's none. I have residents who are petitioning the premier for a four-way stop, and it's ridiculous. If we were in a municipality, we would have a four-way stop because it's a slam dunk from the community standpoint. And but it doesn't meet some engineering standards that are on the books with MODI, and they have no requirement or no procedure to amend or bend their standards to meet the specific needs of our rural communities. And it's completely maddening is the word that I would use for it. So I'm happy to put that on the agenda for a discussion with MODI. It needs to be addressed. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I'm going to continue on this theme. It's our roads have essentially split our communities. Seashell Torito splits the waterfront from the downtown core. Gibson's has Highway 101 that splits it. Lower Road splits the community into the north and the south. And it seems like as the traffic has increased, the difficulty of the communities bridging that gap seems to have increased. So it's the highways and major roads are splitting the communities because people don't cross. So in Langdale, you got one half of the community on one side, one half on the other side, and they don't interchange. So it's definitely a MODI issue, but it can't be just us. So when we have Cathet coming up, we're meeting with Cathet. So that could be a topic about this because I think they have the similar things where a road goes through the middle and they got the upper half and they got the lower half. So yeah, I don't know what but it's this evolution of our communities, and that I look at the upper levels in North Vancouver went through this whole process of so yeah, it's a theme that runs through as the community grows, and the goat paths were easy to cross at one point and now they're not easy to cross. And what I didn't realize is the split in the community. That's what I didn't understand before this topic came up. But I just remember Torito, how many people have been hit on Torito Street crossing. It's a dangerous place. So yeah, I'm on camp in that camp of how do we bridge our communities across these busy roads. Yeah.
Director Seegers?
We have another one that we are dealing with in Seashell right now, exactly to your point, Wharf. So the first block of Wharf, once you turn from the lights and start driving down Wharf, we have restaurants on both sides, we have shops on both sides. The only place to legally cross is at the intersection at Wharf and Dolphin, so right at the lights, or at the other end. So we have a lot of people who are jaywalking there to go, parking over here and going over to the restaurant, whatever. We're looking to get a crosswalk in there so that we at least can funnel people through, and we're being denied because it's too close. And yet we see people darting across the street all the time. So it is an issue.
Have darted. Will probably dart again.
Yes.
Director Pratt.
I would agree with Director Seegers on that, and would continue, like the entire Seashell corridor going through all the way is, I was coming home the other night, and just where Trail Avenue, where there is a crosswalk at Trail Avenue, there's not sufficient lighting there. And it's, if you're in a dark night and it is a marked crosswalk and it's going across our Goat Trail 101, it's it's super dangerous right there, especially this time of year with rainy nights, darkening. But and that's a marked crosswalk that properly crosses the highway. But that whole area along there is very busy. It's not well lit, and Modi needs to do something about that. Either increasing the pedestrian lights or something. But it's as we get busier, but also it's the dark, wet nights and the non-lit, the non-reflective nature of what happens with that paint as it's covered in water on a dark night. It's not a good situation.
Director Beamish.
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly the SRD jurisdictions have different issues, broader issues than we do. We have some control of our internal streets, but we do have a transportation advisory committee, or whatever, however we want to do it. And if we're going to be talking to Modi or talking to the province, we should be making a recommendation as to how these decisions could be better made, or at the local level. And maybe we suggest that the Transportation Advisory Committee is the committee that could vet these recommendations to come to the board for implementation of change. Because it's one of those pieces of work that we have no jurisdiction over, that it affects us all. And we are stuck with the kind of the decision making by the people who don't live in our community. And that's really challenging. We can't speak out. We can support the residents when they come forward with their requests, but we are powerless to respond to the request.
This is a very large topic that I welcome a discussion on, because we do need to address it. Road standards are another one. Modi wishes the extension of Chester Road in Area E to be built to a standard that would look appropriate in Surrey, but is not appropriate for a rural area and doesn't match the existing infrastructure. And there is no recourse for people when Modi decisions negatively affect them for a whole bunch of reasons. But, you know, we're having huge stormwater management problems. So why don't we bring the topic to our discussion with CAFET to see where they are also suffering. And then we need to have a broader discussion about possible remedies at a future time, but not today. So,
and it is on the agenda for our meeting on Monday, so.
It is. And much as I would love to bash Modi for another half an hour, I think that we do need to move on through this agenda. So we've covered off the TAC minutes, I believe. Is there anything that people want to raise from either the PMAC minutes or the WASAC minutes? Or regarding the correspondence from our MP about high-speed internet. All right. Seeing none, I think we have reached the end of our agenda. We do not have an in-camera agenda today, amazingly enough. So I believe it's time to look at a motion to adjourn. I see a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor? All right. Are there any questions from the public? I am not seeing anything. IT, nothing in the queue.
Nothing that I'm aware of.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It was nice to see you, not in person again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.